Welcome to this explainer. Before we begin, I want you to picture someone specific in your life right now as we talk. Get ready because we're about to go through a pretty powerful psychological paradigm shift about someone you likely know.
Have you ever noticed that the nicest person in the room is often the one you know the least? They never raise their voice, they never disagree, they never show a single crack no matter what happens.
And somewhere underneath that comfort, there is a quiet unease you have probably never been able to name. Constant politeness is not always a virtue. Sometimes it is calculated armor used to keep you at a distance. Today, we are unmasking why too nice is actually a red flag. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the politeness paradox. You see, psychology tells us that the human brain is literally hardwired to mistake constant politeness for genuine trustworthiness. Think about it. From a very, very early age, we're all taught this basic biological shortcut. Nice behavior equals safety, and difficult behavior equals danger. And honestly, this mental shortcut works reasonably well for us in most everyday situations. But it possesses a massive, potentially deceptive blind spot. And here is that blind spot. Our brains simply cannot easily distinguish between someone who is genuinely warm and someone who has just learned to, perform warmth as a strategy to manage how everyone else perceives them. It's tricky because both of these approaches produce the exact same pleasant surface. But here's the catch. Only one of them is actually telling you something true about how they feel. Which brings us to Section 2, the missing friction. So what does it actually mean when every single response you get from a person is perfectly predictable and carefully curated? Well, to understand that, we need to talk about relational friction. Friction is just the disagreement, the minor irritations, and those honest, imperfect reactions that naturally pop up in genuine relationships. I really want to emphasize this point. These uncomfortable moments are absolutely crucial evidence. They are proof that you are interacting with a real, breathing, emotional human being rather than just a perfectly rehearsed performance. Now, what's really interesting about this is the implication of that friction just completely missing. When someone literally never deviates from pleasant agreeableness, regardless of what's happening around them, you are not seeing more of who they are. You are seeing a script. And a script, no matter how beautifully polished or flawlessly delivered, tells you absolutely nothing reliable about the actual person operating behind it. Moving on to our third finding, Section 3, a wall, not safety. This might be the most important psychological shift we talk about today. Let's look at the wall versus the bridge. It is incredibly common to assume that unbroken politeness signals safety, right? But it doesn't. It actually signals a wall. Real closeness requires a bridge. It demands the vulnerability of occasionally showing your actual reaction to something, even if that reaction isn't entirely pleasant. A person who has constructed total politeness as a permanent strategy has often done so specifically to avoid the vulnerability that real closeness requires. Think about it like this. They're not being nice to bring you closer. They're being nice to keep the relationship at a manageable, controllable distance. This calculated armor basically ensures that nothing real about them is ever exposed. And crucially, it means nothing real about you is ever genuinely engaged with either. It's a one-way street. Now, let's look at where this all comes from in Section 4, the roots of resentment. Let's walk through how this behavior actually builds over a lifetime. As you can see on the timeline here, many people who present as endlessly agreeable were taught early in life, often right within their own families, that expressing genuine displeasure carried serious consequences. So what do? They learned to suppress it entirely. But that displeasure doesn't just magically disappear because they stopped expressing it. It enters the accumulation phase, where all those unexpressed feelings silently build up, and eventually, because they never learned that honest confrontation was safe, we reach the final stage, the leak. And here is exactly how that hidden resentment escapes. It leaks out through passive aggression, quiet withdrawal, or maybe even sudden, disproportionate reactions to really minor things. You know when you witness one of those sudden outbursts from someone who is usually super polite? Remember this. It is never actually about the minor trigger itself. Not at all. It is the overwhelming results of a lifetime of avoiding honest, vulnerable confrontation. Which leads us into our final phase, Section 5, spotting genuine kindness. Here is a practical litmus test to help you distinguish true kindness from that armor of performed politeness. Over on the left, we have real kindness.
Genuinely kind people are highly capable of disagreeing with you. They can express disappointment, and they can even tell you something you really do not want to hear, while remaining clearly warm towards you the entire time. Now contrast that with performed politeness on the right. It cannot tolerate any disruption to its own surface. It either maintains pleasantness at all costs, or it abruptly cracks into something completely disproportionate when the pressure gets too high.
So, the absolutely crucial point for you to take away is this. Watch for what happens during disagreement, not during ease. When everything is going perfectly, you honestly learn nothing. True, reliable information about a person's character almost always lives in moments of disruption. A relationship with no friction at all is not a relationship without conflict. It is a relationship where one person has decided that you will never see anything real.